A painter was painting in her home studio. Outside, the weather was beautiful, clear blue skies with puffy white clouds. The painter decided that she wanted to capture the day, so she got a large pad of watercolor paper and began painting the sky. She washed in the color of the day, a light blue. Then she took a smaller paintbrush and began to make clouds. She made them light and airy, just like the ones outside. As she painted, the sky began to darken. The clouds became gray and the light blue turned to a deep indigo. The painter was worried. She didn't want her painting to be ruined by the storm that was brewing outside. But then she saw something beautiful. The clouds were turning into all different shapes and sizes. There were wisps of cloud that looked like feathers, cirrus clouds that looked like long, thin ribbons, and there were even some lenticular clouds that looked like giant flying saucers. The painter was so excited. This was going to be an amazing painting. She started to add more color, deep purples and blues, and even some black. She was going to make this a night sky. But then the rain started. It came down in sheets, washing away the colors that the painter had so carefully put down. She tried to keep painting, but it was no use. The watercolors just wouldn't stay on the paper. Finally, she gave up and went to get a bigger brush. She soaked it in water and painted over the entire canvas. She washed out the colors, then took a small paintbrush and began to paint the sky again. This time, she made it a dark blue, almost black. Then she painted the clouds, but these clouds were darker, heavier, and they had a greenish tinge to them. The painter was trying to capture the feeling of the storm, the way the clouds were rolling in and the way the wind was howling. As she painted, the storm outside reached its peak. The thunder was loud and the lightning was bright. The painter felt like she was right in the middle of the storm, but she wasn't scared. She was excited. This was going to be an amazing painting. When the storm finally passed, the painter stepped back to look at her work. She was happy with it. It was a beautiful painting of a stormy night sky, but she knew that it wasn't finished. She needed to add one more thing, and that was the light. She took a small paintbrush and began to add little touches of gold and lavender to the painting. These were the colors of the sunset that had been hidden behind the storm clouds. As she painted, the colors began to glow. The purple became a deep violet, and the gold became a bright yellow. The painter was so happy with how the painting was turning out. She could see the sunset now, and it was even more beautiful than she had remembered. The storm clouds were still there, but they weren't as dark or scary. They were part of the landscape now, and they made the sunset even more beautiful. Finally, the painter stepped back and looked at her finished painting. It was a masterpiece. The sky was filled with all the colors of the rainbow, and it was both beautiful and peaceful. The painter was so happy with how it had turned out. She had captured the feeling of the storm, the darkness, and the danger, but also the beauty of the sunset that had been hidden behind the clouds. It was a reminder to her that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope for a brighter tomorrow. There once was a painter who lived in a small cottage on the outskirts of a village. He was a simple man who lived a simple life, but he had a passion for painting. He would spend his days wandering through the countryside, looking for inspiration, and when he found it, he would bring it back to his cottage and paint it on his easel. One day, the painter was walking through the forest when he came across a clearing. In the middle of the clearing was a tree, and it was the most beautiful tree the painter had ever seen. Its branches were twisted and gnarled, and its leaves were a deep, rich green. The painter stood there for a while, just taking in the beauty of the tree. He knew he had to paint it, so the painter set up his easel and began to paint. He painted the trunk of the tree first, then the branches, and then the leaves. As he painted, he felt a sense of calm come over him. He was in the zone, and he didn't want to be disturbed. But then he heard a voice. "What are you doing?" The voice said. The painter stopped and turned around. He saw a woman standing there, and he was shocked. He had been so focused on his painting that he hadn't heard her approach. "I'm sorry," the painter said. "I didn't mean to disturb you. What are you doing here?" The woman asked. "This is my tree. You can't paint it." "I'm sorry," the painter said. "I didn't know. I'll leave now." He started to pack up his things, but the woman stopped him. "Wait," she said. "Why don't you paint me instead?" The painter was confused. "What do you mean? I want you to paint me as your model." The woman said, "I'll pose for you, and you can paint me." The painter was flattered, but he was also nervous. He had never painted a model before. "I'm not sure if I can do that," he said. "I'm not very good at this." "Don't worry," the woman said. "I'll help you. Just trust me." So the painter set up his easel and began to paint. He painted the woman as she posed for him, and he was surprised at how much he was enjoying it. He had never felt so connected to his painting before. He put all of his energy into it, and the hours flew by. When he was finished, he stepped back to look at his work. He was amazed. It was the best painting he had ever done. The woman was so beautiful on the canvas, and he had captured her essence perfectly. "It's beautiful," the woman said. "Thank you." The painter blushed. "Thank you." They stood there for a moment, admiring the painting. Then the woman spoke again. "You can keep this painting," she said. "It's your reward for painting me." The painter was surprised. "I don't know what to say. Thank you." The woman smiled. "You're welcome. Now, go on. Get out of here. I want to enjoy the rest of my day." The painter packed up his things and left. He walked back to his cottage, and he couldn't stop thinking about the painting. He had never painted anything like it before. When he got back to his cottage, he hung the painting on his wall. He looked at it for a long time, and he knew that it was going to change his life. He had found his passion, and he was going to follow it. From that day on, the painter never stopped painting. He traveled all over the world, meeting new people and painting them. He had become known as the painter who painted the most beautiful women in the world. And it all started with one painting and one woman. The end.